Was Joe being an opportunist when he ran into Juicy Joe in the Bahamas? Well, there's a mixed bag of opinions, but I definitely do want to talk about it. Let's do it. Landville got Juan's phone number. Just doing at the beginning of this was
and Sweet Joe.
Exclusive, Nicola. Everything going
The whole day.
over the weekend. Unfortunately,
Very sort of positive.
all right, my fine friends, I have missed you like crazy, but I did need a vacation. It was my birthday, and my partner was lovely enough to plan a wonderful trip to Tulum, and it was. I'm still thinking about. I'm mentally still there. Okay, but I want to talk about this whole meeting with Joe Gorga and Juicy Joe because there was a lot of rumblings in the comment section. And yes, a lot of them were just fans going back and forth, but there was one person that needed to call it out immediately, and that was Gia. Now, we know Gia for being very vocal about how she feels about her uncle and her aunt Melissa being, negative towards her father, rightfully so. Nobody wants to hear anything bad about their parents, even if some of it is true. I get that. But this meeting apparently is at a local hotspot in the Bahamas that I guess both Joes frequent. And so was it just fate that they were both there at the same time? It's not really clear. There's also no sound on the video, so we can't really hear what they're saying to each other. It does seem a little bit like Joe Gorga is really excited to see Juicy Joe. But it does bring up a question like, why now? Or is there a different motive to this? Are you just trying to stick it to your sister because she just met up with Jacqueline in Vegas? Like, it's kind of like a pissing match in some way. I mean, that's how it's coming across to me. But I have to say, guys, Gia is really not letting up on her uncle and this whole thing. And I get it. She's the older one. She's an adult now, so she's seen and heard a lot. So I'm not taking that away from her, and I'm not saying what she's saying isn't true. Everyone has a different perspective on this. But I do think it's a little odd that Joe Gorga is filming his interaction with Juicy Joe after speaking so poorly about him, which is prompting Gia to, I guess, call it out, which she did. And, I'm sorry, it does kind of look opportunistic to me. I mean, I've watched it over a couple times, I've thought about it. But what really was interesting to me was when I went back to the comments, Melissa had initially responded to Gia, basically saying, we both said poor things about each other. Like, get the hate out of your heart or something like that. And then I go back, and that comment has been deleted. And now Joe Gorga's response to Gia is identical to what Melissa had just wrote, except the only difference was the W in we was lowercase in Joe's comment, whereas in Melissa's it was a capital. I know, small detail, but I will say, just to give them the benefit of the doubt, I do understand that you can toggle between two accounts or more. But like for me, for instance, I have a personal Instagram account, Giorgio Not Armani, and then I have my Giorgio Says Instagram. So I do go back and forth. And sometimes, guys, I'm commenting, not that it matters because it's the same person, but in this situation, it could be either, it could be a couple things. It could be that they have a social media manager or that they both have access to each other's Instagram. So maybe it was that he was on Melissa's and he commented from hers and then realized, oh crap, I don't want it to come from her. So he deletes it and then goes back to his account and then just basically types it up again. That's one thought I had. The other thought was maybe the social media manager was told to write the comment and she accidentally wrote it under Melissa's, and then it just could be a number of things. Either way, it's a little dismissive to just say, get the hate out of your heart, when we as viewers have watched Joe speak poorly about Juicy Joe and, all the things that came up over the last couple seasons when his name was brought up. So now seeing him interacting with him, being happy. I'm not saying you can't move on and let bygones be bygones, but it's kind of like you're throwing it in your niece's face that like, yeah, I just talked smack about your dad, but I'm hanging out with him right now and I'm going to post it so the world can see it. Okay. There's a lot of you that are saying it's, it's just Joe trying to like one up Teresa because of the whole Jacqueline thing. I don't disagree because I do slightly see as I'm watching the season, there is a bit of a pissing match. They're still angry with each other. But you know what, guys? I'm really getting drained with this whole like feud between Teresa, Joe, Melissa. It's been like this forever since the beginning of Melissa coming on the show. And I'm not sure if we can point the finger at one particular side because I mean, I'm not saying that they're not wrong, Joe and Melissa, but I'm also not going to say that Teresa's not wrong in her own way. She's not facilitating an environment that will allow for her children and Melissa and Joe's children to keep a relationship because now you're bringing them on camera. You're asking Gabby, you're getting Gabby to talk on camera, who never speaks at all. She's the quiet one, and she's still young. So I disagree with her being put in the spot to start having these conversations because all it does is it amplifies everything. You want to have that conversation, do it off camera. Okay? This is between the adults. And if Gia wants to chime in, she's an adult, she's allowed to. And I'm not saying Gabby's not allowed to. I just don't see the point in that. I don't see what point you're trying to prove. Oh, because they're calling out that, Joe and Melissa weren't there while she was away. They were only around for cameras. Well, if you guys got hired to do a spinoff because your dad wasn't bringing in any money, well, yeah, they're going to show up a lot more when they have to show up for work. That's how this works. But if you're going to tie it all together and say they only showed up when cameras were there, I don't necessarily believe that. Now, were they at the house every day? Probably not, but your dad was home. So, like, I get it. I get both sides of it. I just think it's being, like, dragged out to a point now where it's like, so you guys basically are not going to try to mend fences at all. So then just don't interact. Don't interact. Pick something else. Go about your ways, be cordial, and move on. You guys don't care to fix things. You don't care to like actually try. Then fine, you don't have to. No one's entitled to have to make up with their sibling if in fact there's real like deep-rooted issues there. But I will say doing this, having these conversations with your daughters on camera is just adding more fuel to the fire. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, listen, I hope that it was genuine, that Joe and Juicy Joe could kind of maybe mend the fence a little bit and try to move forward in a positive way. But if it's not, it'll come out in the wash, right? I mean, I don't know. But please, I want to know what you guys think of this because I quickly had posted this when I was coming back from Tulum. I saw it and I posted it to my Instagram. And a lot of you guys really were excited that the Joes had gotten back together and thought it was great. But then there was a good part of you guys that were like, no, this is such an opportunistic thing to do. He's only doing that because Teresa did it, met up with Jacqueline. I get it. So, but let me know down below, is Joe being opportunistic or was this authentic? Let me know down below. And until the next video, you guys, I will talk to you next time. Bye.